So I've got some good news. Your Saturday's not totally wasted because it's raining now. You had nothing better to do anyway. You couldn't have worked in your yard, so now you can say, "Phew, I didn't waste my Saturday morning." We have all our questions. We're going to do answering questions. Some of you are new here today. We write those down on index cards. They will be in the back. We'll be picking those up in the next 20, 30 minutes. Kara, who just spoke, has index cards if you need it. But what we'll do is I'll finish up my lecture, just a short bit here, and then we will go into the question and answer, and I'll just read the question and give you the best answer I can. And if I don't know, I'll say that, hopefully. So we've heard kind of why diagnosis is important. We've heard basic things you can do not to be your diagnosis, and I think the last thing that Kara gave us was very, very powerful, because that's really showing us that it is what we align with. Are we going to align with health, or are we going to align with disease? Are we going to be a victim, or are we going to be a superhero as such? So let's look at now really how I put my model together. And why sometimes why a diagnosis is so misleading is because it's usually not just one thing. So, I like this analogy here because this is our body. Our body's the bucket, okay? And so we have a certain amount of toxins we create, and it's our ability to tolerate these toxins, our body's ability to get rid of these toxins. Sometimes inflammation is kind of the driver of disease, and our ability to not be inflamed is where disease keeps us from having disease. So we can do a couple of things. When we have our bucket, we can improve our ability to detox. We can, this whole thing. All right, so we can get bigger. We can add away. We can improve our ability to get rid of toxins. We can add our spigot. How do we add a spigot? So we can increase our bucket size, and by increasing our bucket size, we can detox better. We can eat more foods that are healthy for us. We can make sure we're getting rid of toxins, which is the spigot. We can make sure we're pooping and peeing. How do we get rid of toxins in our body? Our liver takes them and we make them in a water-soluble form. We excrete them through the bile. And if we're not pooping at least once a day, we really should be going twice a day. But if we're not once a day, those toxins recycle. So having a bowel movement, one of the best things you can do to detoxify. It's really, really important. And making sure you're drinking enough water. How are you to excrete toxins if you're not drinking enough water? And I don't think we have to drink as much water as a gallon a day. I think sometimes more is just more. But if you're thirsty, drink. And if you're not paying attention, you need to be at least drinking half a gallon a day. I think the general rule of thumb is 6 to 8 ounce glasses. I think you would be more than enough. Sometimes more if you have activity. Another way we get rid of toxins, but with the spigot at the bottom, is we sweat. How do we sweat? We exercise. So how we handle our toxins and the overflow of toxins is actually the problem. So when the bucket is able to get rid of toxins, we're good. But what happens when the bucket gets full? What happens when our body is no longer able to get or has too much toxins? We're not getting rid of them as fast as we can. That's when we start seeing disease, okay? And what makes our bucket full, okay? So a lot of people are like, well, I had food sensitivities, but I didn't feel too bad. Or they say, I never had food sensitivities before, so that couldn't be it. I didn't feel bad. I used to eat gluten and dairy and never had a problem with it. Well, that may be true until you add on something else. And you add on mold. You moved to a new house 5 years ago. And people say, well, that can't be it. It can't be my food sensitivities, and it can't be mold, because I've been living in that house 5 years, and those things never bothered me. That may be true, okay? Very much you're correct, and you're wrong. Because you add something else to it. Okay, this is how we have to think about disease, guys. We got to think about disease as, okay, 2 of the 3 things were not a problem. Maybe you can switch those around, and it may be food and Lyme, and people are like, well, no, I didn't have a problem with those things. I got bit 10 years ago. I can't have Lyme disease. I've never had symptoms until now. But then we throw mold in on top of it, and guess what? Disease starts pouring out, okay? These are the reasons why we see things like multiple sclerosis. I've had 2 or 3 patients. One comes in a wheelchair. One can't get off the bed. And I start removing these things at the bottom, and guess what? Those diseases go away. Do we want to call it multiple sclerosis? Do we want to call it Lyme disease? Because a lot of my MS patients also have Lyme disease. And amazingly, when I treat that and treat the underlying causes, I fix the mold in their environment. I take care of their food. Even though they never had a problem with it, it's a source, it's a form of inflammation that fills up their bucket so it's overflowing. That's why we can't think of disease as a diagnosis. Oh, I have MS. You don't have MS. It's your body's way of telling you your immune system is attacking you because you're overflowing with toxins, or you're overflowing with sensitivities, or you're not getting enough sleep. You know, another one, autism disease. Here's another one that the buckets are really small. And a lot of these kids, they have very poor ability genetically, sometimes what they've been exposed to in their environment. Their buckets are really small and they overflow really easily. So when we think about this and people say, well, it can't be food. I've always eaten this way and it never bothered me. It wasn't until this happened that but so humor me and try taking the food out. Humor me and try looking at your environment when it comes to mold. Humor me and look at your amalgam fillings in your mouth that carry mercury that may be increasing that load. And let's go to a different bucket. Is it sleep apnea? Guess what? That bucket that holds only so much toxins, which is your body's ability to detoxify, that may not have bothered you before, but then we add on significant stress, the death of a loved one, having a teenager, you name it. These things are important. They add up because all of a sudden your whole body changes. Then we throw in something like mercury and we start overflowing again. Okay, mercury exposure, or you pick the topic, pesticide exposure. Every little bit counts. Anything we can remove takes pressure off that bucket so we have less things overflowing. So when we think of Lyme, when we want to give people a diagnosis, I love Lyme because it's really one of the most complex diseases and one of the most non-money making diseases on the planet. Why are we so focused on the Zika virus when we have our own epidemic that is just devastating people every day? It's a complicated issue. It's a political issue, but there's no new drugs for Lyme. There's no vaccine they've come up with Lyme. There's no money to be made in Lyme, and actually it costs a lot of money. So and there's a great book called Cure Unknown that everybody should read if you want to understand the politics of medicine sometimes. But I really emphasize to people, you're not Lyme disease when they come in, okay? You are a patient who also has Lyme because, you know, most of these people have food sensitivities. A lot of these people have sleep apnea. A lot of these people have mercury fillings. A lot of these people are not eating whole foods. And so when I approach them and they say, well, I need antibiotics and I'm going to get better, I'm like, no, you need to approach this like anything else. You need to, okay, yeah, we'll go after the Lyme, but we're going to go after the food. We're going to go after the toxins. We're going to go after the sleep apnea. Because until you do those things, you're seeing yourself as a disease and not as a whole person who has multiple things that may be going on. So let's talk about arthritis. I mentioned it earlier. Arthritis is a collection of symptoms. Arthritis is not a bad joint. It's a body attacking a joint that's less than perfect, okay? So I've got bad joints. I mean, I played football. I was way too small to play the position because I had no talent. They put me on the line. And so I got beat to death at 165 pounds and my shoulders hurt. But you know when they hurt? When I expose myself to toxins, I go into a moldy environment, I eat the wrong foods, all of a sudden those same joints that don't bother me at all become painful because they're less than perfect. And now my body's angry. when I eat the wrong foods. And it's going to attack anything that doesn't look like, that's your immune system, that's your gut. All of a sudden it's on alert. You ate the wrong food. It doesn't know that it was the food doing it. It's just saying, hey, we're under attack. It's going to attack those joints. You know, inflammation is an overflow of the body's, is a natural response of the body to insult. Inflammation, the more we can create the ability to modulate inflammation, the more we can eat better foods, the better sleep we get, we take that inflammation and take it down a notch. We keep the body from attacking itself. So everything we've talked about today, quit thinking of disease as a linear, oh, this is what I've got. This is multiple sclerosis. This is arthritis. This is autism. Autism is not, you meet one autism patient, you've met one autism patient. Not one is alike. And I can say that after seeing a lot. Not one is alike. Why? Because it's a collection of symptoms. What may work for my son did not necessarily was the cure-all for Kara's son. And what's good for this person is not going to work with this person because it's a manifestation of a collection of symptoms brought about by a lot of different factors. But most of it is the inability to modulate inflammation and inflammation of the brain. So when you give an autism patient red dye, it's going to send most of them, because it's an inflammatory of the brain, it's going to regress them. Okay? When you give them, why so many respond to gluten, it's a good common thing, is because gluten is inflammatory. It makes the brain inflamed. You can't inflame one part of your body. Your joints, your wrist doesn't hurt with arthritis and your brain not be inflamed too. The body doesn't differentiate. It does a systemic inflammation. Okay? You may not know it, but when you're having arthritis, I can tell you when I get into the wrong foods, I'm going to have two things. I'm going to have anxiety and I'm going to have joint pain. And I have other things too that I may not be aware of, but I know those two are connected. Because when my joints start hurting, I'm like, oh crap, I got exposed again. And I know that my brain is going to be affected. So you can't think, well, I just get joint, when I eat that, I get some joint pain. It's no big deal. Well, guess what? It is a big deal, because we know that amyloid plaques that we see with Alzheimer's disease is affected by inflammation. So every time you're inflaming your body, you're creating long-term effects. You can't, there's nothing that's not connected. The body talks simultaneously from your head to your toes. It's always in communication with each other. You can't separate and say, I don't have that bad of symptoms. You're doing something. Your body's trying to tell you something. When you've got arthritis we're seeing our kids with autism, we're putting too many chemicals in our environment. We're feeding them the wrong foods. There are yellow canaries in the coal mine telling us that our environment is getting dangerous. It is dangerous. So we have to do more with organic. We have to do more with the decisions we're making with our environment. Chronic fatigue, the dreaded chronic fatigue. I love chronic fatigue because I like working with it. I love helping people understand why they have chronic fatigue. And I may not figure it out right away, but I'm going to keep working on it, because this is not a disease. It's a collection of symptoms that we called something. Okay? We're not sure what to call this, Mrs. Jones. Oh, you meet these criteria, you've got chronic fatigue. Nothing we can do for that. Here's your medicine. Well, have we looked at the mold? Have we looked for infection? Have we looked for diet problems? Have we looked for your ability to detoxify? I'm working on a genetic project right now to pull information out of 23andMe that talks about how well we detoxify and what are things we can do to help people detoxify. So, you know, ultimately, your ability to detox, get rid of inflammation, whether you make your bucket bigger by eating the right foods, make your bucket smaller by eating the wrong foods, not getting enough sleep. Oh, going the wrong direction. Sorry, guys. You know, or we help with our bowels. We eliminate. How do we get rid of toxins? And that's the end. So, but, you know, when we're looking at disease, we need to think of it as multi-layered. You know, it's not just, oh, I did this, it didn't work. What other things were also in that bucket that needed to be removed? Okay, so we need to think of disease if we're going to give a diagnosis, it's multidimensional, and we aren't our diagnosis. We are a collection of different events that have led up to this presentation that's telling us that we need to do something different, okay? We need to take action. We need to be that person that is invested in our health, and we're not going to get the magic pill. There is no magic pill. So thank y'all, and I would take questions now. This is a great question. You know, how can a person detoxify the body? And I mentioned detox quite a bit. We can detoxifying the body is one. I was just talking with a patient, and she's like, do you know that our soil is depleted of selenium? And yes, this becomes an issue. Selenium is our number one. Glutathione, the 800-pound gorilla in the cage of detoxification, is completely dependent upon selenium. Okay, you can get too much of it. Don't go above 400 to 600 milligrams a day. But selenium is a big detoxifier. And what does detoxify mean? It means the ability to take, okay, so in a perfect engine, okay, an engine that's running great, it's going to have waste. It's just the law of physics. There's going to be wasted energy. And our engines in our body are our mitochondria. And they're 90% efficient. That's amazing. There's very few engines on the planet that are 90%. I think it may be the most efficient engine ever is the mitochondria. But it's got 10% waste. There's got to be toxins that come off. That's if you're doing everything perfect. You've got 10% of the energy production is going to turn out as waste or free radicals. You have to do something with that. That's detoxifying. Taking something that is toxic to the body and making it not toxic. How do you do that? You use glutathione. You add hydroxy groups. You make it water soluble. You excrete it. And then glutathione with selenium and the right energy dynamics makes more glutathione. And we have a nice process. What happens when we eat a lot of sugar? Well, guess what? Those mitochondria are working a lot harder. That's what insulin resistance is the inability to get rid of toxins. The cells say, hey, we can't get rid of the waste we're already making. Don't send us any more sugar. And so the insulin receptor doesn't allow sugar to come in, and you have sugar build up in the bloodstream. But to answer your question, detoxification is our body's ability to get rid of the toxins that are just natural part of the body. Well, let's add mercury to that. Mercury binds up glutathione like no other. All of a sudden, mercury is taking away our ability to detoxify. So the natural production of energy byproducts is going to be detrimental. We eat a McDonald's burger. I'm sorry, I'm on video and I'm not supposed to say particular brands. I'll probably get sued. But anyway, y'all knew me when I had my clinic right now. So long story short, you eat a burger. Any burger from any particular restaurant, and you get this toxic, and you're eating fast food as such, and it's not full of nutrients, and you've just introduced more burden. You have mercury fillings, and you may have mold exposure, and your ability to detoxify the mold. And so this toxic load builds up, and your ability to get rid of these things is what detoxification is, okay? It's our ability of our liver to get rid of things. How does things like milk thistle and broccoli work? Okay, they're huge for helping us detoxify, right? They're actually, our body sees them as a poison. Our body sees them as we need to upregulate our detoxification process. It's our natural ability, it's their ability trying to keep pests away, trying to keep other bugs away. They create these metabolites that our body says, oh, it's just like giving a little bit of poison to somebody, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we got to increase our ability to get rid of that. That's why, and that's interesting to me, but it upregulates all our detoxification enzymes. That's why kids don't have great detoxification enzymes. They don't really like broccoli and all the things we like as adults because they don't do as well getting rid of those things. I mean, they don't do as well as upregulating. So, you know, I have patience with my children now because I watch as my 15, 16, 17-year-old, he eats a lot more foods than he ever did when he was 12. So there's hope. But that's detoxification. Really great question. A person can detoxify the body by pooping twice a day. If you're having problems with that, then you need to look at your food choices. But that's one of your best ways of detoxifying. Eating cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. It tells your body, upregulates your detoxification pathway. Make sure you're getting enough selenium. Make sure you're absorbing amino acids, because there's no way to make glutathione without amino acids. And be careful what you're putting into your body. Every little bit counts, especially when you've got all these other chemicals that are out there in our makeups, in our water supply. Those things are taking a toll on your body, and the more you can remove, the less those things are going to. Some things we can't avoid. So the things we can't avoid, let's cancel that out with things we can avoid, which is the things we put in knowingly. So this is a thing about someone had a husband who had diabetes. I told him to go gluten-free. Didn't see a big difference, so he stopped doing gluten-free, and he didn't see a big difference. Well, the problem with gluten-free is when people go gluten-free, it's basically we're exchanging one thing. So gluten products are like low-fat products. A lot of people replace the fact that they're doing gluten-free with a lot of quote, gluten-free products that say gluten-free, and they do a lot of processed food. We know that gluten-free bread is just as bad for you as far as a sugar standpoint as gluten bread. There's no difference. They're both highly glycemic. So we start buying gluten-free cookies, and we do all these foods that are processed and say gluten-free. Gluten-free means, to me, eating almonds, eating whole foods, getting away from processed foods, and that's really, so a lot of times when people go gluten-free, they're just exchanging one poison for another. So when you go gluten-free, it's okay to have the occasional piece of gluten-free bread. It's okay to have the occasional gluten-free cookie. But what we're really talking about is more of a whole foods diet, okay? So when you eat gluten-free bread, you get as much of a glycemic spike, especially as a diabetic, as if you ate a Snickers bar. So yeah, gluten-free, but like I say, you can't say, okay, we're just going to take food out, but I'm going to keep not paying attention to sleep. I'm not going to pay attention to organic, and I'm not going to eat whole foods, and then expect miracles. You have to do it as a whole plan. Everything is connected. So that would be it may have helped him if he had done other things with that. Gluten-free, also getting more sleep, exercising, eating whole foods. I will come back to that one. How do you feel about the GAP diet or paleo to help you heal? You know, a lot of diets out there, it's really individual. I think some of these diets are really hard to follow long term. I tend to do more of a modified paleo diet. Paleo is big, eat like the cavemen. But some cavemen were in different locations. I think it's very biased. You know, some cavemen ate tubers. Some cavemen ate beans. So to say the caveman ate this way, well, maybe in this one specific region, do you know what region you're from compared to that caveman? I think that's a real misnomer, and I think it's a buzzword that we need to realize that people ate differently all over the world, and what they had in common was whole foods, okay? Potatoes aren't bad. We actually, they go into glycogen, which feeds your muscles, and if you're a bodybuilder and you're not eating starches, you're not rebuilding the glycogen stores, and you're going to start tearing down protein. Nothing's bad in small amounts, except maybe, even sugar in small amounts. Most of us can't do small amounts. I mean, keeping your diet less than 20 grams a day is a challenge. But paleo is a great in thought process because they're thinking whole foods. I love beans. I think I do fine with beans. I couldn't imagine life without it. So with paleo, I tend to do a little bit more of a modified. GAP diet is wonderful. We see it used a lot in autistic patients and patients with a lot of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, and it helps. It's more of a restrictive diet, but it's taking even more out of the diet. but it's just hard to follow long term. And they do help you heal because you're taking out some of the bigger ones like dairy. You're taking out bigger ones like gluten and corn and a lot of grains. A lot of grains are inflammatory, not just gluten, but I usually talk just about gluten because if I tell everybody that the less grains you eat, the better you feel, I'm not going to get much response. Is there a great book on site to help you figure out how to configure your diet for optimal health? I think everybody's got to find their own way to optimal health from their diet. We do have 2 nutrition coaches in our practice now. Kara's a nutrition coach, as is Carmen, and they can kind of help you find that which works for you. I think the answer to that question is varied because everybody's got to find their own way. We can do that with allergy testing. What things are you reacting to? That usually takes a lot of the guesswork out. You got to eat right for your blood type. There's a little bit of data to support that. There's always going to be a new thing, a new way of eating. Somebody's going to swear by their way of eating that works for them. The key is keep it simple. Eat whole foods. Try not to eat processed foods, things that come in a package, things that you can't pick off of a bush or dig out of the dirt. I think you do better when you eat a whole foods diet. And when you avoid processed foods, you're avoiding sugar. Some people like me, I found out, hey, I don't do well with corn. I don't do well with peanuts, wheat, and dairy. I started out just doing a gluten-free diet, and then I found out, I feel a lot better. But, I could probably feel better because I don't feel quite right when I eat dairy. So I took that out. So for the next 3 years, I just took those 2 things out. And then I was like, you know what? I think something's making me tired. Let me try to I'm eating corn every day. Let me remove that. And I felt better. And so the better I feel, the more sensitive and in tune with my body. I know what I can and can't eat. I know, I didn't take a crap today. So I'm like, something I ate didn't work. My bowels quit working as well. That's a great sign. Are you having constipation? You're probably eating something that you shouldn't be. Okay? Plain and simple. That's my guy. I'm kind of letting I trust my body to tell me when I'm doing something that's not beneficial. And that's kind of what you have to do with your diet. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer to that, but I don't think there's any perfect diet. Everybody's going to be selling you a book that, hey, they've got the best diet out there. But I think, we have to get away from the diet of 30 years ago. Let's go low fat and high carb. That I can guarantee you is not the way to eat. And I think we're moving more to healthy fats, healthy proteins, grass-fed proteins, healthy complex carbs when we eat, combining those and creating a solid balance. My dad's family lived well into their 90s with good quality of life. My mom's family had a lot of cancer, died in their 60s. This seems like genetics. I know it's more complicated than that, but is it just a coincidence that these 2 sides of the family took different paths? No, I think genetics, I think some of us are going to have a higher hill to climb, okay? My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. We have diabetes in my side of the family. I'm going to have to work harder than the next guy to make sure I don't get those diseases. I've got to even be more strict in my sugar intake. It's not fair, but it's life sometimes. You're going to have to exercise more. I've got to exercise 3 times a week if I want to change my genetics. But you can. You're going to have to put more in the health savings account. You're not going to, instead of paying 9% return annually, you're only going to get 5%. So guess what? To get to that $1 million at the end, you're going to have to put more than $5,000 in. You're going to have to put $10,000 in because to reach the same goal, you're going to have to invest more. So genetics sometimes can tell you, hey, that person, they can get away with these things because they do have good genetics. They're not going to have to put as much in. That's not me. I'm going to have to do more. It's not fair, but as the saying goes, life ain't fair. You're going to have to do more. And so, yes, genetics probably played a role in the family that didn't live up until their 60s. That just means you're going to have to take more of an active role in being healthy. You can live to be in your 90s. Your genetics don't determine that. Your choices do. It just means you may have to make better choices. Is there a health concern regarding fruits and vegetables that are hybrid but not GMO? No. We've been doing hybridization since forever. since Mendelian genetics were kind of in the hybridization. They were doing it before him, but he figured out the genetics of that, or the cross types. But hybridization is totally different than GMO. Hybridization is actually why wheat's got more gluten in it, but wheat is not a GMO product. It's actually a hybridized model with about 800% more gluten than it had 100 years ago. My sister had her silver fillings removed because she had high mercury. Now her mercury level is even higher. Can the process of fillings cause higher mercury levels? Yes, it can. So when you remove mercury, you have to understand you're drilling mercury and it's going to vaporize by a very hot drill, and you're taking it out and you're going to be swallowing it. So having the right kind of dentist remove your mercury, there are, I think it's IAOT, which is a certified, is that right, Karen? It's called AIOT dentist, and there's quite a few in the area. They put a dam in your mouth. I'm speaking from personal experience. They hook you up to oxygen. They have constant suction, and they're trying to decrease your mercury load. You need to take charcoal before. You need to take charcoal after. You need to be on detoxification agents at least a week before and at least 2 weeks after. Detoxification agents being things like milk thistle, N-acetylcysteine, which makes glutathione. You need to be on chlorophyll. You need on everything that can bind mercury. You need selenium. Selenium binds mercury as well directly. But if you're going to take mercury out, don't just go anywhere to get it done, because you can make your levels extremely high. It can make you very, very sick if you're already mercury toxic and it's not done correctly and you're not detoxifying correctly. So yes, that would make sense if her levels went up and she did not have the proper precautions in place. Meditate for 3 days a week? No, meditate every day. It's a habit. You have to create habits. It's just like eating the right foods and exercise. Meditation is a habit. I recommend it every day, because what happens if you do it 3 days a week, next week you're not. You're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, I felt some better. I don't have time. But if it's just like getting up and brushing your teeth, one of my teachers told me, rise, pee, and meditate. RPM. It's a great thing, man. I don't get my day. It may be for 3 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got up late, but I need to sit and at least focus on my breathing. And that's really all I do, is just try to focus on my breathing, the in, the out, the pauses between breaths. I mean, that's a great place to start. Meditation is not, rising to some higher level. That may happen with you, but it's really about just creating consciousness of your thoughts and recognizing that that's not who you are. You're not your thoughts. And how long each meditation? I recommend starting at 5 minutes. If you can do 5 minutes, great. Some people, it's going to freak you out because you're so used to your mind being in the background. You're like, wait a minute, there was no thought there. Wait a minute, what was that? And so it's real hard sometimes just to get used to you, not being that thought. Sometimes I use the trick. First time I ever had any real clarity or real consciousness, the analogy of be like a cat looking for a mouse to come out of the hole. Try to think of your next thought. What's my next thought going to be? That's an awesome exercise. Do it when you get home, because you can't think of your next thought. So that's a place, that's what that feels like. Oh my gosh. I mean, I was in a bookstore and I read this in a book, and it jarred my whole world. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to know what that felt like, not to always be being schizophrenic. And that's pretty cool. So start at 5 if you can. Start at 1 and then work your way up to where you feel comfortable. What is it that gives you enough energy to get through the day, or to be present instead of exploding? Say, hey, this is all how I see it. I need to take 5 deep breaths before I respond to this. What charges your battery? Some people it's 30 minutes. Some people it's an hour. Some people it's 15 minutes. It's up to you. Dr. Morris, what was the issue of Time magazine about genetics and health? I can go back to it. Hold on just a second. Y'all want to see the actual issue? I actually don't have it on there. So that was probably 2013. It was in 2013, I would suspect. Can you cite any model, approach, or system that recognizes faultiness of algorithm model of diagnosis and treatment? Yeah, the algorithm model, Mayo or Cleveland Clinic, Scandinavian countries, the algorithm model is set up on randomized controlled studies, which is what is the goal for medicine. And so when we get to this point, we do this. When we get to this point, and algorithms are great in the standard medical model because it creates consistency across the board, and people are doing what's been shown to decrease morbidity, mortality. It's just a costly system, and actually we rank like 37th in all the countries of the world as for chronic care. So our algorithm model works to create consistency. It creates standard of care, which standard of care takes away that ability to think to me. And so I don't have a problem with algorithms, except that we quit thinking and we think of disease in algorithm models. Algorithms are supported for if we're all going to do a certain type of medicine, if we're all going to do a certain standard of care, let's all do it the same way so we have consistent outcomes. The problem is, let's don't even go into an algorithm to begin with. Let's fix the disease so that we don't have diabetes or we don't have asthma, and we don't have to go down those algorithms. That's the problem I have with algorithm. We quit thinking of causes and we start thinking of things as permanent. So no problem with algorithms if you're going to practice a certain way. But if you want to get to the root causes, algorithms aren't, that's my real disillusionment with algorithms. I was off a couple of months. Yeah. All right. So, would you say January 2010 was the Time magazine. New diagnosis for Alzheimer's, told 2 weeks ago. Any suggestions and process now about a cure? So Alzheimer's, I've had probably in the last 6 months, 4 people come in with that diagnosis. They didn't have Alzheimer's, a lot of them. They had deficiencies. And by replacing those deficiencies, getting to the root cause, so many of them are doing so much better. Yeah, it's a lot of times we're like, oh, this is Alzheimer's, but a lot of times it's the things we were talking about earlier. Are they in a mold? One lady I had in a terribly moldy house. Her inflammation levels are off the charts, and as we get older, our ability to detoxify is just not as good as when we were 20. And so the more toxins you're exposed to, the more inflammation you got, and it's just like Alzheimer's is almost like autism for the elderly. So you have to go in and start removing causes, replacing things. Statin drugs, pregnenolone is a huge, so many of my patients, I had a very young man, I say 51, who was having almost Alzheimer's symptoms, and we did a workup, and basically he was low on pregnenolone, I mean almost non-existent, which is after cholesterol comes pregnenolone, and pregnenolone has been directly correlated with brain function. And so many of my people have been put on statins, and all of a sudden they don't have enough pregnenolone in their brain, and they have very low cholesterol, and low cholesterol has been directly correlated with Alzheimer's. So we're giving up, we're getting out of the cage with a tiger for heart disease and getting to the cage with a bear. I don't know. I think we have to be, and that's a whole nother lecture on statins and the role it plays, but a lot of times low cholesterol, and there's a great book written by Dave Perlmutter about that and how getting these low cholesterols is not good for a lot of other disease processes. So we have to be real careful. So Alzheimer's can be multifactorial too. We have to think of it as a multifactorial disease. Is this person toxic with mercury? A lot of people are. Is this person, and that causes tangles in the brain. Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes because they've not been able to move glucose into the cells of the brain anymore. So that's what they're calling it now, is type 3 diabetes. So it's an insulin resistance of the brain. So there's a lot of ways to come at it. So it's not I've seen too many cases reverse to say that, oh, they got Alzheimer's, that's the end of that. I just don't, I don't like diagnoses. All right. I feel like my son has plateaued in our 3 years of our biomedical journey. We have tried supplement after supplement with no improvement, and it's draining our bank accounts. What do you suggest? We have the nutritional and vitamin piece in place. And that's when you start thinking outside the box. You start looking at what could be driving inflammation. It all comes back to inflammation for me. What's inflaming the brain? Is there mold? Is there Lyme? Is there an infectious disease of another type that's affecting us? So many of my autism patients have an infection. So many of my autism patients actually have Lyme. Is it the only cause of their infection? No, but it can be a big player. I start thinking what pieces are missing, and that's where our care plan comes in. We start pulling in a lot of different things structurally. How are the eyes tracking? It's not just about supplements and diet. It can be a lot of other things. And without seeing the child, it would be real hard to say, but everybody's got a story, and it really, that would help me to understand even more what that story is. All right, guys. Now, there's one I didn't answer because I couldn't read the writing too well. I know that's ironic, right? Doctor can't read somebody's writing. Oh, I've been using non-toxic markers to identify critical supplements. Is it still dye? Is there a better way to do this? It would be how you're marketing. If you're marking the bottle, that's no big deal. But if you're marking the supplements like on them, I would be real careful of putting it directly on the capsule. Maybe make little baggies and mark the baggies. But I would be real careful even if it says non-toxic. That's a relative term, and I don't know what criteria they have to meet. Here's one. Can Lyme disease be cured with treatment? Lyme disease, this will be my last question to answer. Probably one of the more loaded questions. Lyme disease, we're really struggling with understanding the complexity of Lyme disease. I've had patients be on antibiotics for 4 years, not by me, but come to my office, have been on antibiotics for 4 years, and I actually do a blood culture. And of course, to the literature, they say there's no way that after a month of antibiotics, there's any more Lyme. But this person grew out Lyme again and they just finished antibiotics 3 to 4 weeks, so it's unlikely they got exposed in that 3 to 4 weeks to grow out Lyme in a blood culture. Can we cure Lyme? Yes. I think it's important to think of it like cancer. Cancer, no matter how good of a surgery we do, no matter how good of our chemo, there's always cells of cancer left. Why do some people overcome cancer and never get it again and others don't? It's our natural immune system. So my focus on Lyme is how do I teach your body to fight the infection? Just like with cancer, how do I teach your body to fight the cancer? How to fight the Lyme or how to fight the cancer. I think I may have said that twice. But how do I teach your body to do it itself? That's where this is what this is really about, is teaching your body to take over the job so that you don't need antibiotics anymore. Change your immune system, change your diet, change your sleep. And the people that I've seen recovered have seen themselves as recovered. They see themselves as getting healthy. They believe that. And they told themselves, just like Kara mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to tell yourself that even when it's hard to believe it. I am healthy. I will be healthy. And those people, and that changes your immune system. That changes your whole blueprint. But yes, I've had a lot of recoveries in Lyme. But it's taking me understanding what that person's exposure to mold, what their food sensitivity is, what their sleep is. It's all about bringing balance and everything connecting. So can Lyme disease be cured? Yes, but it takes a coordinated approach, just like autism, just like multiple sclerosis, just like all of these diseases, these diagnoses. Are not really diagnoses. Just remember, they're a collection of symptoms that we've given a name to. So, all right. Thank you all very much. And we got a raffle drawing for a free membership. I feel like Vanna White. Too bad I don't look like Vanna White. Jeff Doman. Is that right? Did I say it wrong? I'm from Louisiana. I cannot be held accountable for how I pronounce things. All right, so we'll find Jeff. We got his email. So and we will take it from there. All right, guys, thank y'all for coming very much.